Daughters of the American Revolution. Very important to us, very important to the history of our country. And Paula Gibson is going to speak to us about the who, what, where, when, and why of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Thank you.
Before we get started, or as we get started, if you can stand, would you please stand and join me in first the Star Spangled Banner. Hopefully somebody out there has a really good voice. And then the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll tell you why later. Okay? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you all be seated except my DAR ladies, please? We would like to recite to you the American's Creed. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy in a republic, a sovereign nation of many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies. Thank you, ladies. The reason we did this is because this is our opening at every DAR meeting. Because the flag is the symbol of our freedom. The song says what we think. The American's Creed is how we live our lives. So I wanted you to know this is what the DAR is about, is this flag and what it represents. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll talk about the DAR. I'm the chapter regent, Pahrump Springs Chapter, of the Daughters of the American Revolution, which some people call DAR. We'll refer to it as DAR a lot, rather than saying all those words, but it's the same thing. And I bring you greetings from all of my sisters all over the world. We have currently, and of course things fluctuate in any organization, but we have about 185,000 DAR members all over the world. By that I mean that we have DAR members, ironically, in Canada, in Great Britain, Japan, France, Spain, Mexico, all over. We have 3,000 chapters, And we are currently over, since the beginning of the DAR, 960,000 members. That's a lot of members. So, let me tell you about how the DAR got started and what we hope to accomplish by being members of the DAR. And I just realized I forgot to use my microphone, but you can all hear me, right? Yep. Okay. All right. The Daughters of the American Revolution actually is a nonprofit, non-political, all-women's organization dedicated to service with a threefold mission: historic preservation, education, and patriotism. Can't think of any other more important reasons to be a member of an organization except one that promotes things like that. Kind of funny how we got started. First of all, let's go back to the American Revolution, which I promise not to test anybody, but you know, often when I'm talking to young people and I ask them when the American Revolution was, they say, well, I don't know, was it 1850? No. We officially started the American Revolution on April 19th, 1775, at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And if you read my bio, you know that I just happened to have been born in Concord, Massachusetts, so kind of ironic that I would be associated with the DAR. The revolution continued on to officially about 1783. However, there are exceptions to membership, but if you had a patriot between the years of 1775 and 1783, then you are qualified for the DAR. With some exceptions, and we're going to go into those. Okay, so we had this awful revolution. And I say awful because families were divided. Really only maybe 15% of the entire population was for going to war. That meant that there were lots of other people that stood by, waited to see whatever. Some people left town after the British lost the war, including brothers and sisters, separated, went to Canada, went back to England, whatever. War is never fun. And by the way, how many veterans do we have in this house? Yeah? Thank you for your service. I would say that it started with these guys in the Revolutionary War, but we all know that wars have been going on since the beginning of time. And it's unfortunate that we have to go to war to get what we think we want. So, we had this awful war. It's over and done with, we think. Then we had the War of 1812. And again, we were fighting against the British. We had the Mexican-American War in the 1840s. That was over. We had the awful, awful, awful Civil War, or the War of Rebellion as it's known, which again separated families. Even from the same state, some families were for the North, some were for the South. But we got through that war. Hopefully we were stronger because of it. And by the time the DAR thought about being formed, we were somewhat recovered, and we wanted to celebrate our national history, okay? We wanted to be together in this. So an organization called the SAR, or the Sons of the American Revolution, decided to get together and form an organization. And you notice I said it's the Sons of the American Revolution. Well, some ladies thought that they would really love to join this patriotic organization, but they weren't guys. And, you know, and I understand that perfectly. It's sort of like, you know, I'm a gal, and I think the Boy Scouts are more fun than the Girl Scouts, but I can't get in. So the ladies decided that they were going to do the same thing, and they started the Daughters of the American Revolution in 1890. It was started by 4 ladies. I'm not going to read you their names because I can't remember them from one time to the next, and there's no reason for you to remember. But what you need to remember is that these were not particularly rich ladies, into politics, whatever. 2 of them were single. 2 of them were widowed. All 4 of them had families, either children or extended families that they had to take care of, and they worked. Now, you know, it wasn't really until after the Civil War that many, many women worked. In the South, they were on the farms, their husbands were there, they took care of business. The ladies took care of the house. Civil War did away with that. Many lost their husbands, they had to go to work. They had to take care of things. So women were coming into their own on the national front. Mind you, we did not have the right to vote. We didn't get the right to vote until the 19th Amendment, which is in that Constitution book that you have on your chairs. But it was 1920, and women were given the right to vote. So it was long after we started this organization. But as I said, we started with 3 missions: historic preservation, meaning that we wanted to make sure that the history of how we came to being, whether it was preserving documents, monuments, buildings, trails, histories, whatever, we wanted to make sure that those things got preserved for our children, our grandchildren, and so on. Now, having been in the classroom, I can tell you that it's very important to me that kids learn history. And some adults, too, who don't have a clue what's going on. So it's our opportunity through our many, many outreach programs for us to make sure that this happens. And I'll tell you about those in a little bit. Next thing is education. Well, we all have these things that we hear about education. Back in the day, for instance, I have a document which was a test for 8th graders, I believe it's in Kansas, to graduate on to high school. And they had to take this long test. I don't know that I could even pass the test right now. And I was a pretty good student. I think I'm a pretty good student of history, but it was, a lot of it was geared to farming and things like that. But it seems like we're dumbing down our education. And I hate to see that. So when I would go into the school as a substitute teacher, every chance I got, especially if I was in a history class, because I love history, and that's part of the reason that I love the DAR, I would talk to the kids about something. Like one day we had a conversation about telephones. And I said, did you know that when I was a kid, they had an operator that came on and talked to you when you picked up your phone? Did you know we had party lines? Party lines? Did you know we had dial phones? What are those? You know? They just can't imagine having anything but a cell phone. Everything is instant. They need to know the struggles that people had to get us where we are today, so that we're going to make mistakes. I mean, every generation makes mistakes. No generation is perfect. But one of our goals is to help with the education of kids. One of our more recent projects with the DAR is something called Community Classroom. And we at Pahrump Springs have chosen to adopt Pahrump Valley High School. They have a program called Students in Need. This is a program that we don't necessarily have to go in the classroom, but the idea of the Students in Need program is that out of maybe 1,300 students at the high school, there are maybe 300 who for some reason do not get the care that they need. They're not fed properly, they're not clothed properly, they don't have toiletries to keep their bodies clean. And so we've decided that every month we are going to collect whatever, and we're going to take it to the high school, and it's available to any student who comes in. They don't have to be homeless, although this does include the homeless. But that's our way of doing it. Some other places are going into the classroom, reading to kindergartners, working in the office, helping the teachers as aides, whatever they want to do to help with education, because education is so very important. Okay, our third goal is patriotism. Well, okay, if you don't know about our country, how would you know what is patriotism? One of the things that we do, and you each have a book of the Constitution, because that's not only an educational tool, it's also historic preservation, but it talks in many cases about amendments we wanted to pass, we didn't pass for whatever reason, but this is the basis of our government. And so if we go back to education a little bit, one of the things that really, really bothers me is that in most schools we're not teaching cursive writing anymore. Okay, so you get a copy of an original document, whether it's the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Articles of Confederation, the Magna Carta, I don't care what it is, and it's in cursive. You have to have somebody interpret it for you if you don't know how to read cursive. They can tell you it says anything they want to tell you, and if you believe it. So, one of the reasons why we're in schools, help with education. Okay, so we became the DAR on October 11th, 1890. It's quite a structure at the DAR. I mean, this is a non-profit group, but let me tell you, there is so much to the DAR in order to make all of this work. But the point is, we have so many things that are available to you, the general public, because of the DAR, that we hope you'll take advantage of. For instance, in Washington, D.C., we have 2 buildings. One is the headquarters building, which houses a library, which has many, many family genealogies. It has historical books. It has wills, deeds, probates, land records, all kinds of things. that have been donated to the DAR, which are available to anybody that comes to that library. Our chapter librarian, Della, she's going to raise her hand, and was our state librarian, has made sure that we in the state of Nevada and Pahrump particularly have made a big effort to donate things to this library so that they're preserved for everybody to use. So we just did 92 pamphlets, not to the DAR library, but to the Family History Center, which is going to digitize them and put them online. So we're constantly working with these kinds of things. So there's the library. There are the period rooms. And Ella made this wonderful poster here, which I hope you'll take time to come and look at. But this is the inside of the DAR. And the period rooms are exceptional. I had an opportunity this fall to go with my daughter, who is also a DAR member, and see the period rooms. And it's just amazing because they're all outfitted in the period around the Revolutionary War. And it's each state that does this. They are responsible for everything in that room. If the wallpaper starts to peel for whatever reason, that state is responsible for replacing it. So I believe it was New York State they were talking about that actually sold inch squares of wallpaper in order to pay for it. Because, you know, period wallpaper is expensive. It's not like going to Home Depot and buying wallpaper. So they have whatever. They have the dining room tables or the whatevers of the time frame. The New Hampshire room, which is important to me because my patriot happens to be from New Hampshire, is all toys of the period. It's this huge room and all toys. Everything has been donated. And it's something you can go on tour. There's a docent that takes you through. You can go and research in the library. We have a museum. It's being renovated right at the moment, but we have a museum there. And then there's Constitution Hall. And Constitution Hall is where they have many, many concerts, again, open to the public, and is very important to Washington society. And we have our, what we call Continental Congress every June, and that's where our meeting takes place, and I think, I haven't been able to go to it yet, like 4,000 people, all DAR members there at the same time. And we conduct our business for the nation there at that time. So these are designated as historic buildings, which means that we have to keep them up, and we do, and we're always figuring out ways to make sure that things are preserved. So let's talk about who's eligible for the DAR. Now I know you gentlemen are saying, darn, I can't be in the DAR. You could be in the SAR, however, but if you have daughters, they might be eligible for the DAR. So this is what makes you eligible for the DAR. You have to prove direct lineage to someone who served in the Revolutionary War or supported the American Revolution cause. So, I say this to people all the time because I do a class on using ancestry at the library. And the question comes back, well, I think my uncle served, direct lineage means it's a grandfather. Or it could be a grandmother. We have one of our members who has, her patriot is Nancy Morgan Hart. She was a spy. She has a female. We have some people who are trying to prove Indian background. Proving means that you have to go from yourself to the patriot, and each generation there, and for me it's, I think, 7 generations, I had to prove birth, marriage, death of each of the parents, okay, on that direct line. Now, you know, sometimes there isn't that birth certificate because they were born at home. Or they died in the field, or whatever. So we have to go looking for other things. And that's one of the things that makes the DAR exciting for me, is that I love to do research. I love genealogy. I love the stories that go along with the people. And so sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to get there. But you could use wills, you could use probates, you could use land records, you could use church records. What else? I birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses. We've had people that it's taken a long time to get there. And in fact, we have one member who got her daughter and her granddaughter in on her husband's lineage, and found out like 13, 14 years later that she had a patriot of her very own, and now she is a member. Hopefully, the reason that you would want to be a member of the DAR is, yes, because you're proud that your family was involved in the American Revolution. And I admit that. I am very proud to have that lineage. But it's not like we're snooty people walking around saying, look at me. Why, I've got these people that fought in the Revolutionary War. And we have one member in the state of Nevada who has 52 patriots. 52. And normally I would be wearing a ribbon for my patriots. She has one. Mine's a little thing here. Hers is, you know, whole chest plate. But because I hope that you would join, because you want to be part of this effort of historic preservation, education, and patriotism. Because there is not one of us that doesn't do something with our community. We are involved with veterans. We're involved with the homeless. We're involved with the schools. Tell us what it is you need, and we probably have a committee for that. And we can maybe figure out how to do something. We are limited by our age sometimes, because I'm up there and I'm one of the younger ones. We have one member who just turned 93. We have one member who just passed away who was 94. We have junior members who are under the age of 35. Unfortunately, they don't live in the state. So we are limited by the number of active members that we have in the community, and we're limited by our finances. But we've actually done some partnerships because our members belong to other groups. And so we've done partnerships with Shadow Mountain Quilters. We've done partnerships with Quilts of Valor. I don't know if any of you have heard of Quilts of Valor, but I just want to put a plug in for Quilts of Valor, because Quilts of Valor recognizes veterans with a handmade, special for them quilt that they will have forever. Quilts of Valor is doing this by donation, spend many, many hours on it, and the goal is to recognize especially World War II vets before something happens to them. But actually I've been told, and I was told before my husband passed by him, that the Vietnam vets are passing away faster than anybody. And so we don't want to miss out on them. We want veterans to always know that they are appreciated, and if it weren't for them, and again, I applaud you for your service, I wouldn't be able to stand here and talk to you about something that I'm passionate about. It would be something the state was passionate about, perhaps. So, let me give you some insight as to things that would be patriotic service that would make your person qualified. The first thing is, and I thought this was funny, the Boston Tea Party. We're going to reward you for having been in the Boston Tea Party. And of course, I'm from Massachusetts, so, you know, whatever. I'm already a rebel. You were one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. You signed what they called an oath of allegiance or an association test, which said that you were for the revolutionary cause. You served in the military. You provided money for the troops. You housed the troops. You fed the troops. I have however many great-grandfather who would make me eligible that was in his 70s, 80s during the war, but he was a quartermaster. So he didn't actually fight, but he made sure that the soldiers were taken care of. Another interesting one is ministers who gave patriotic sermons and encouraged patriotic activity. Okay. So in order to find something like that out, you've got to be doing some research. You know, that's just not something that's going to pop out there and you're going to find it. If you were a county, town, state official in the new governments after the Declaration of Independence, then you're eligible. So, besides my DAR ladies, how many people in this room think that they might be eligible? Male and female. Okay, 1, 2, 3. That's it? Bet you are. Okay, when I do my class on ancestry, quite often I have, you know, 2nd or 3rd generation folks from Europe or whatever, and of course they would not be eligible, they would think. However, we had French forces here, so you could be eligible because of those French forces. We also had Spanish who had activities, and there's, I don't know if I copied it down or not, and I guess I didn't, but there's a group of Spaniards who provided cattle from the Spanish colonies. They're eligible. So before you think that you're not eligible, you might think about it. The Hessians originally fought with the British, but when they found out they were losing the war and they had been sent from Europe because Europe was so war-torn that they had nothing to go back to, they became part of the American forces. So again, think about it. And Diane, I don't mean to point you out, but it's very, very hard, but not impossible, to find black folks who were in the Revolutionary War.
I kind of like the way you say that, black folks.
Well, okay. What would you like me to say?
That's fine.
Okay. Also, Indians, you know, we use them as scouts. They were involved in all kinds of things. So before you count yourself out, you might just want to think about it. And if you are interested in the DAR, I am sure that the museum can give you a contact for me. I'm around. In fact, I know half the people in this room from other groups. But when you're thinking about doing this, you go and you get yourself a pedigree chart. And some of you are saying to yourself, what's a pedigree chart? Pedigree chart is a chart where you start with yourself, then you have your father, mother, you have your father's father, father's mother, etc. Okay? And you put as much as you can on that pedigree chart. And if you can indeed go back to the 1700s, then you pick those people that would have been living in the right time frame to perhaps have served. And then you go to the DAR site, which is dar.org, very, very simple. It has a section there called the GRS, the Genealogical Research System. And you can put in the patriot name or the possible patriot name, and it will tell you if we already have that patriot listed. If it doesn't tell you that, that doesn't mean that that person is not a patriot. It just means nobody's used that person yet. So I was talking about our one member. She got a brand new patriot. Once you've got that, then we start working on the proofs. And we have a registrar, we have helpers, they will help you get into it. And you know, even if you don't end up having a DAR member, like I said, I do this class at the library every Tuesday. Been doing it for, I don't know, 6, 7 years. I am obsessed with doing research. So if you come to me and you say, I want to look up my family, I will get you started looking up your family. Now, there are some areas that I'm not expert in, but we'll get you started and you'll go from there. So, anybody have any questions about the DAR? Sandra?
What time are you at the library?
I'm at the library on Tuesdays from 2 to 4. And we have free copying during that time. You can actually go to the library anytime. You can go on Thursdays also. I'm not there, but somebody else can help you, same time. And any time that you can get into the computer room, you can use the Ancestry program. You just have to pay for your printing. John, did you have a question? No? Okay. So, you're all going to run and join the DAR, right? Or get your daughters or granddaughters in on it? Okay. Well, if I can't answer any questions, please take the Constitution books with you. Use them for reference. Very, very important that we know what that Constitution says, because I don't know a time in our history there hasn't been some kind of question about what the Constitution says and how we interpret it, and right now is no different than any other time. And beyond that, I'm not going to discuss it because we are non-political. So, Okay, well, thank you for coming.